So let's get to it. Short introduction of Shannon, but I'll let her speak to her own experience. Shannon's the head coach of the Canadian women's national volleyball team and has been since 2021 after serving as the next gen coach and the assistant coach to the senior women's team for 2 years prior to that. Before returning to Canada from Australia, Winzer served as the Australian women's national team head coach and the Volleyball Australia Centre of Excellence head coach for the Australian Institute of Sport from 2016 to 2019. During her time in Australia, she also served as the national team assistant coach, the Australian U23 team head coach, and led the Melbourne University Blues to 4 consecutive national titles. She's currently living in BC with her husband and her 3 children and is on a race to the next Olympics. So we're stoked to have you here, Shannon. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your schedule to chat with our coaches from across Atlantic Canada.
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to this. I think you just reading all that made me a little bit more stressed out today, but that's okay.
Everyone always hates the bio reading portion, but I promise it will get easier from here.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I'm going to start with some pretty basic questions just for people on the call to get to know you a little bit. And I'll start with, like most people probably on this call, you made that athlete to coach transition. You were a university athlete and a pro athlete in volleyball. And I'm just curious, what led you to coaching in general and more so to the high performance side of coaching?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would love to say it was a very well thought out, intentional career path, and it wasn't that at all. People say I played professional volleyball. I say I played far from professional volleyball, but it was next level, I guess. I did get a little bit of a salary, but I had a normal job. For me, like I loved team sport and I loved volleyball, and I just didn't want to finish. And so when I finished playing, that's how I started coaching. But when I first started coaching, I was very much a part-time coach. I had a regular job. I was coaching poor, maybe my coaching salary paid for gas money. I was still coaching 4 or 5 days a week, but I had a regular 9 to 5 job. And that's how I started coaching. I didn't ever at any stage foresee it as a profession. There obviously aren't a lot of women who coach. There's also in Australia, there weren't a lot of paid jobs. And dissimilar to Canada, because Canada, you have your youth sports and your NCAA and your college jobs. In Australia, the only full-time jobs were really with the national team or the national team program. So at the time I was coaching, I wanted to keep doing it, and then I wanted to do it at a high level. It wasn't until and even when I was coaching with the Australian team, I was an assistant coach. But at that time, we were like number 43 in the world, and it was camp space. So it was like every weekend. It was like a weekend a month sort of thing. So I wouldn't even consider that full-time coaching. But then they started this national, this Center of Excellence in Australia, and I really wanted that job. So I applied to coach Australia and the Center of Excellence, and I got that. And I thought, yeah, I know elite coaching. This is great. I'm going to go coach full time. This is now going to be my job. How cool is this? I get to wear sweatpants for a living. This is going to be awesome. I now hate wearing sweatpants for a living, but I'm like, this is going to be awesome. And then I went to the Australian Institute of Sport, and oh my goodness, I was hit in the face with, you have no idea what high performance coaching is. And I had no idea. And so not only then was I learning what high performance coaching really meant about working with all these different sports scientists and how I can use all this high level scientific knowledge and how that is supposed to fit with my coaching, to then develop, yearly training plans and individual performance plans. And I'm like, wow, this is something I have no idea about. And that is probably why I stayed. It was very cool to be tackling something that I thought I knew about and I had no idea about. Every single day. I was learning something new, and it was just this huge challenge, and I loved the challenge. So I'd say that was the clincher for me. I had never intended to be a full-time coach, but once I started working in high performance, it's sort of that carrot that you'll never actually reach So it's the draw of always trying to chase it that kept me into coaching. And it will probably be the thing that kicks me out of coaching. It will probably be the thing that I've just had enough of. And I'm like, I'm tired of not ever being good enough. And I'm probably going to walk away. I imagine that's what it will be. But that's what kind of kept me there. And, you know, I love the team aspect. I loved still working with the team and the athletes and the staff. And I would say I consider myself a builder more so than a coach. And that's definitely what has kept me going and why I came to Canada as well. I could see something that we wanted to build and I wanted to be a part of that. So that's how I, you know, ended up coaching. I think along the way too, it's really important to recognize that I didn't just, you know, get there on my own. Like I had certain people along the way going, hey, you need to apply for this. And at no stage did I ever think I was qualified or ready. But every stage along the way, I had people pushing me to apply. And then I absolutely had to learn on the job, and I absolutely failed on the world stage multiple times. So everyone gets to learn sometimes in a nice little corner by themselves. I had to do it in front of a lot of people. So I guess that's why I ended up where I am.
Awesome. I love that you refer to yourself as a builder. And I'm wondering if you can speak a little bit more to that, and especially in the context of what got you back to Canada in the first place.
Sure. I mean, like first with Australia, Australia was about, I mean, I played for Australia. They were really bad. They were like, we were probably, you know, 80 in the world. I'm a 5'10" outside hitter who doesn't jump very well. So I was playing for a national team. So they were mediocre then. But when I took them over, they were 43 in the world. They were a camps-based program moving to become a full-time program. So then looking at Australia going, okay, how do we increase world ranking? How do we at that stage was more qualifying for world championships and Olympics because of the Olympic qualification process. It wasn't realistic for Australia. And so we were essentially building a development program that was a full-time pathway to the senior national team that was being built for the first time at the Australian Institute of Sport. So I got to go in and build that. And then, you know, we got to reap the benefits of then of these athletes who, you know, were not only developing and playing full time to represent Australia, but then taking our top talent in Australia and finding them ways to play overseas professionally. So that could also build our senior national team. So there were so many pieces to try and increase the world ranking for Australia. We got to number 30 by the time I left. And we had played in 3 World Grand Prix, and you know, I'd been to several world qualifying tournaments. And so they had gotten to a really nice place. With Canada, when that job came about, I actually applied for the head coaching job. By no way thought I was going to get it. And I didn't, just so everybody remembers, I didn't actually get the job. But I applied because I wanted them to know that there was a woman coaching internationally. I was coaching at World Grand Prix with Australia. I wanted them to know there's a Canadian woman overseas coaching international volleyball. And so I applied for the head coaching job. They hired Tom. And then they said, okay, like we still want to bring you in. We see you as like this succession plan for Tom. And obviously I would like to think that most high performance coaches, like your goal, well, my goal was always to qualify a team for the Olympics. It didn't look like it was going to happen in Australia. I also think there's some other issues in Australia that I didn't think it was going to happen. I looked at Canada and went, yeah, this team can absolutely qualify. I obviously probably thought it was a far longer plan than other people. Like people were thinking, okay, that year, I never thought it was going to be that quad. I thought it was going to be, you know, the quad we're in now or the next quad. But looked at like the foundation of Canada, like all the pieces. I understood the system a little bit. Obviously, I'd been away for about 15 plus years, so I wasn't fully integrated into the system, but I knew about U Sport and NCAA. I knew how the provincial association sort of worked with the national federation, and I could just see so much potential. But I thought there were some key things that had to change. And so for me to take over the Canada job, it was for me to be a full-time program coach who was not only going to coach the senior national team, but kind of take charge over the whole pathway to ensure that, yeah, we could improve the success of the women's team, but we could also then, you know, make improvements to our development pathway to absolutely impact future success and sustained success. I just think there's so many great things happening in volleyball. It's a sport that is played by so many women, by so many young girls, and we absolutely have the pieces that we need to just kind of put together and align a little better to get some success with the senior side. So I guess when they offered me the job, it was, yeah, I'll take that. I took a quite a decent pay cut, and I went from a head coach to being a B team coach, and I learned a ton from Tom, but I took it based on the opportunity that was going to be there in 48 years.
Amazing. Um, so to build on that, for folks on the call who might not be in the volleyball world, can you kind of set the scene of what the women's senior team looked like when you came back to Canada and what was kind of going on with the program?
Yeah, gosh, it feels like a long time ago. In 2019, um, I came back and I was an assistant coach with Tom, but really I was just the B team. I was the B team head coach, so I was the next gen coach. We were, I want to say maybe we were number 18 in the world. We could have been number 20, but we'll go with number 18 in the world. We were playing in only continental events, so we weren't playing in any of the international federation events like world like volleyball nations league. We had been to world championships, but we never got out of the first round. We had a team, a B team, and a development pathway, but not a lot of alignment, and our athletes were playing in starting to play in better leagues, but we were still sitting at that, we were at events, but maybe not a team to watch out for. In 2019, Tom worked tremendously hard that summer and helped qualify Canada for Volleyball Nations League, which is the marquee event for volleyball. It's the top 16 teams in the world play in it every single year, for across, a month and a half to various continents around the world. And after that happened, Tom left. So when I took over in 2021, right after COVID, we didn't increase our rankings. We were still number 18 in the world. It was that first year was pretty tough. I mean, after COVID, I think everything was pretty tough. But now in 2024, we are number 11 in the world. We consistently beat top teams in the world. We also in 2022, for the first time ever, made history by making the second round of world championships and finishing 10th. And I know 10th doesn't sound like a big deal, but it's the highest finish ever for Canada. We are on the cusp of Olympic qualification. Essentially, everything comes down to world ranking points. So we're 22.3 points away from Olympic qualification. It'll come down to us and Netherlands after 3 rounds of Volleyball Nations League. Our athletes are now, we have most of our team playing in the top leagues around the world. In Turkey, Poland, Italy, we have all of our players in our senior national team, except for our 2 liberos, are professional athletes, full-time athletes. We have greater program alignment from our B team through to our development pathway. But we are on the cusp of Olympic qualification right now. And 4 years ago, in 2019, Canada lost their Olympic qualifying event, but it was a continental qualifier back then. But we were ranked number 18 in the world. So we've made some pretty big progress over the last 4 years.
Yeah, some gains there. And I think I don't know, it's kind of hard to understand how close you are to that Olympic spot, but it's like it's going to come down to
It's
some
close.
major math, right?
Yeah, it's incredibly close. Like it's
Yeah.
not this is not far-fetched. So our first Olympic qualifying event was in September in 2023, and the top 2 from each Olympic qualifying event goes, and we tied for second. But unfortunately, it goes into tie breaks of points, and we lost on a tie break to Serbia. So we basically won too many games in 5 sets instead of less. And so they went ahead. And now 22.3 points in world ranking points is not a lot. Last year at VNL, we gained over 23-point gap in our world ranking points last year, going 6-6. So it's incredibly close, but it's such a mathematical equation that we can't tell you exactly how it's going to work, because not only every time you win a game, you obviously get points. Every time you lose points. But if you win in 3-1 versus 3-2 or 3-0, it's all different. It's got an algorithm that is. We have a document we can figure out how many points are on each game, like are up for grabs each game. But it's really probably going to come down to the second to last game of VNL when we play the Netherlands, and when we play them. There's essentially 20 points up for grabs, because when we win, we would get those 10 points, they would lose 10 points. So really it's going to come down to, we've got to find 2.3 points somewhere else, and we've got to make sure Netherlands don't get it.
Wow.
So yeah, it's beyond close. Beyond close.
I love, like you just so casually said, when we win. And that's something that I want to tap into here is, like, obviously a lot of work has gone into this program to make the gains that you've made, but I'm curious, you've beaten some of the world's top teams. You're clearly a contender and a threat, and probably someone a lot of teams don't like to see in a competition.
Mm.
So the world sees Canada as a contender. I'm wondering how you built within the team, within the athletes and the staff, like that winning culture or that belief of
Mm.
when we win, when we're at the
Yeah.
Olympics.
I think it's absolutely intentional. We don't allow ourselves to think about a plan B, and it has been a shift. And it was a gradual shift. So when I first started and I started working the development pathway, we absolutely told athletes we aren't looking for athletes who want to play for Canada. That's not what we're looking for. We're looking for people who want to be Olympians, because now we're talking about that next level expectation, that next level of standard, and just throwing it out there. Like, let's start talking about the Olympics. Let's really state what we're here to do. So it started with that. Did I say that that whole belief was just like that? No way. First year into VNL, we were just trying to survive, because you can get relegated, and we're a challenger team. So as soon as you get out of VNL, you're not chasing many ranking points. So it's like your death. You cannot get kicked out of VNL. And then our second year into VNL, we started to beat some top teams. Now we have a lot of talent in our team. So I don't think it's just, it's not just belief. We do have a lot of talent, but we started beating some top teams. We got towards the end and we were one win off making to Volleyball Nations League final. But we had just become safe. And we just kind of took our foot off the pedal. And we were like, all right, we're safe. And we didn't push to keep winning. It was just an interesting moment where we looked back on that, and we were going into world championships and we went, what are we doing? Like, we can beat the best teams, but why were we just satisfied with requalifying? That can't happen. So then it became this full change in mindset with the athletes, like pushing them, like we are chasing this. So when we went to world championships, we qualified for the second round of world championships. And at VNL, we knew, okay, we took our foot off the pedal last time. So now we absolutely are talking about, like, no, we're now setting new goals. Our new goal is getting into the quarterfinals, which we missed by a really bad refereeing call against Poland. It was that close to getting to the quarterfinals. But we always keep it as part of our language. We always setting new goals, because we've been achieving goals like for the last 4 years. We've been meeting KPIs, but when you meet a KPI, it's so easy. It's human nature to go, all right, we're good. And so our mental performance coach talks about mental toughness is your ability to override human nature. And so that's what we do, is we set a new goal. Okay, well, we can't just sit back and go, well, that was done. Let's go next. And we set a new goal. The other piece is everything we do, every time we meet, every time we go into a training block, we absolutely talk about, up till now was qualifiers. It's okay, how are we going to qualify? This is the steps. These are the games we have to win. These are the points we need. And it was a part of our everyday conversation. So it was never like, let's just go win games. It was always like, no, like, this is how we're going to do it. And we revisit that plan so many times. Every time we're together, we're revisiting that plan. Every training block, every time a competition finishes. And then I think very much like the culture of believing in it is it has to, there cannot be one person who wavers. And that one person, not just athletes, it's staff, it's our IST, it's our team coordinators. If anyone is talking about a plan B, that can be contagious. So just like positivity can be contagious, our belief in that this is going to work is going to be contagious. And the other thing we talk about in our gym is what our mental performance coach calls flip the script. Flipping the script is really just telling yourself a different story. So we've historically always lost to the USA, and we're going to our first game of world championships. We had like USA and Serbia, like the top two teams in the world at the time. I'm like, great, awesome pool. And our mental performance coach is going like, well, why can't you win? Like, why? Like, why? Like, why are you already telling yourself, like, as long as we play well? Like, no. He's like, let's start flipping the script. Tell yourself a different story. And I always famously tell the story, like when we went into our game against Brazil this last summer, they were world number one. We beat them in 5. It was a huge game. It was a big moment for us. But going into the dressing room at that time, I told them the story about my son, who's like, at the time, he's like 7 years old, and he's at soccer practice. And people, I was watching them do like first captain, first pick. and the coach picks like, he says, okay, you guys all get to choose your teams, and my kid's the last kid to get picked. I'm like, who does that, right? And so we're in the car, and I'm like, got it. Like, my kid's been the last one picked, and I'm like, how did that feel? And he goes, can you believe they picked all the crappy kids first? And I'm like, this kid is telling himself a totally different story, and why not? Like, why not? So in our gym, we just talk about that. Like, let's dream big. Like, why not? But the other flip side is, once you start telling yourself like that, okay, we can beat number one, we can beat the best teams, we can qualify. We also fully have to understand the expectations that come with that, and the standards we come with that. So I think this whole belief thing is really, we came out, we set a vision, we absolutely showed them how we can attain that vision, and we were consistent in our language and our actions throughout the whole process. So it's like, okay, who's not going to sign up for that? And if people aren't able to meet the expectations or the standards, unfortunately, their time ends. Like, tough calls have to be made, because we've been really clear from the start. But we have such a cool group of athletes and staff, so it's part of it.
Yeah, that is, I love the no plan B, and I love the flipping of the script. And it's interesting because I was talking to another coach today who's probably on this call, and she was just saying, I'm so done with like the term underdog, or like, or just happy to be here attitude
Mm,
at a national championship or at a Canada
yeah,
Games or whatever. And I think, like, being from Atlantic Canada, and not just speaking for volleyball, I think a lot of times we'll show up at a national championship, at a Canada Games, and there is that, if the belief doesn't exist, you're in trouble,
yeah,
that you can roll with the other teams. I was watching the U Sport Championships this weekend for volleyball, and Michelle Wood, who coaches Acadia,
yeah.
they had a big win in their quarterfinal, and
They
in the
did.
little press conference afterwards, she said, people keep being like, you've had a great season. You've had a great season. She's like, this is our season. Our season is not over. It's still
Yeah,
ongoing. And I think,
yep,
yeah, you can't really control how other people perceive you as a team, or perceive you as a threat or whatever. But
yeah.
I love just like making sure absolutely every piece of the team is bought into that.
Yeah, and when I say like, we like that happy to be there mentality, it unfortunately is a little bit of a Canadian culture thing as
Mm-hmm.
well. When I say that we caught ourselves out after our second VNL, when we sort of just took our foot off the pedal, and we probably could have still gotten into quarters. The staff were guilty of that too. Everyone
Mm-hmm.
was. Every single one of us was, because we were achieving above what we were expected to. We sort of just went, our goal was to requalify, but then when the quarterfinals were on the table, we didn't make a push for that. It wasn't like everyone sort of let up, and it was just, I still wanted, probably one of my, I look back and go, that's probably one of my bigger regrets, but we absolutely learned from it, because we went to world championships that same year. And when we made our goal of, making it to the second round, we are like, right, I do think as a leader, our job is to kind of instill a sense of urgency. And I think for us going into, these Olympic qualifiers now, like, it's like every game, we've got to instill that urgency in what we're doing. And I had to kind of look back and go, well, I didn't do that in that second year of Volleyball Nations League.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we met goals, no one would know it from the outside, but we absolutely knew it. We went, yeah, we let up, and as coaches too. So
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
lesson learned, I think.
Definitely. I just got a chat from someone who asked, how much time does your mental performance coach spend with your athletes?
A lot. He joined us. So I actually work with a mentor, Allison McNeil, who's a Hall of Fame basketball coach. She helped qualify Canada to the Olympics in 2012. My biggest fear as a coach is that I have never been to the Olympics. I'm trying to qualify a team for the Olympics. So how do I know what I don't know? I surround myself with people who know. I work very closely with Glenn Hogue, the men's former national team coach who's been to a couple of Olympics. Allison McNeil, basketball head coach. My mental performance coach was the mental performance coach for basketball, and has qualified basketball, has been there to help qualify basketball to the Olympics, as well as other sports and individual sports. So he came on board through my mentor through Allison in 2021, no, 2022. He's been there for a couple of years. He travels with us. He does way more hours than we pay him for. He travels with us. He comes to we work out the program for the summer. He might come to like the very first training camp, and then he'll travel with us for this year. He'll travel with us all of Volleyball Nations League, all of pre-Olympics and Olympics. And then he meets with, when he's not with us, he checks in with all the athletes and the staff regularly. And I met with him 2 days ago. I'll meet with him again today. And it just depends on need. When you're away from the court, okay, where does he need to work with you? For me as a coach, he works with me on multiple levels, but he's been a big part in helping us establish this new culture, or not new, improved culture for our women's national team. So he works with us a lot. A lot. And I used to always work with mental performance coaches, so I've never liked any of them. No, I'm just joking. I've struggled to see an impact from a mental performance coach with a team. And it wasn't until I met Roger Friesen, who's the most amazing mental performance coach. I first met with him, and I'm like, it never works. I don't know. I don't want to be told to visualize and breathe. Like, this isn't working for me. And he's like, right, if I'm going to do this, I'm not doing death by PowerPoint. I will not show PowerPoints. I will not fly in, fly out and be your mental performance coach. If we're doing this, I'm absolutely integrated into your program. So as a coach, you're like, oh my goodness, like you have to be vulnerable. You're letting someone into your program to have full access to athletes, all staff, to fully see how you work. But I will tell you, if you are not willing to do that and be absolutely vulnerable to someone coming into your program like that, it won't work. And so this guy is amazing. I trust him more than anybody in the world. And that had to happen for him to have the impact that he has. Because we previously, we didn't have the money. So you'd have someone come in and, do these fly in, fly out PowerPoints, and they were probably really great practitioners, but we didn't have the money. So we didn't have, someone in with us full time. But Roger's amazing. So a lot more,
Yeah.
if we could.
I really want to touch on the vulnerability piece too, which leads me to another question I was going to ask. For International Women's Day, there's a really great piece in the Globe and Mail where they had you giving advice on leadership.
That's right.
Vulnerability came up in it. You talk about being vulnerable, but the quote that I really liked is, you said, "We may lose games, but I'm never going to lose the relationship game." And I'm just wondering if you could talk a little bit about how that mindset kind of guides your coaching practice.
Sure.
And yeah.
Well, I mean, it has to do with partially like my coaching philosophy. I consider myself a relationships-based coach. Like, I truly believe that we can achieve great things, but it's going to require a lot of trust, and obviously a foundation of a trust and respect. And that takes time, but you have to be really intentional with how you build that. You're not, yes, when you just travel, I mean, we live together for 4 months of the year. So obviously, yeah, you'll get to know each other a little bit, but are you really being intentional with building those relationships? That's what I mean by that is, I'm going to ask the athletes to do things and to sacrifice, and they're going to have to themselves be vulnerable and take risks, and they have to feel safe to be able to do that. So by being safe doesn't mean you have to be soft, but you have to get to know them. They have to know that you care. And for some, it's very easy. I'm an extroverted person, and people who are like me, we're easy. Like we're building relationships, we're connected, but it's naive to think I have 18 athletes like me. I have athletes who are introverted, who keep to themselves, who, don't share easily. Well, how is my relationship with them? And so I am very aware of who I've met with, who I've walked with, who I've talked with, who I've had coffee with, and I make sure I'm doing that with everyone. I need to feel connected to the whole team. They need to feel like they've had my time, they've had my energy. Even when we're in professional leagues and they're not here for 8 months of the year, same thing. They're getting voice notes. I keep they made it sound like I kept a list. I don't. I keep like a little tally. So I know if I haven't spoken to an athlete in 3 weeks, well, they're going to get a voice note from me this week. I absolutely care about everyone I work with. But it's not enough to care. You need to show you care, and you need to show that you value them. I believe you need to show that you value them as people. You value, their dreams, their goals, their struggles. You understand where they're coming from, and different athletes perceive caring in different ways. Some, it might be that I know who their sister is, or I know what struggles they're going through. For others, it might just be me having a quick coffee with them, before a practice. So I try and connect with everyone in different ways. I am very intentional with this, but let's not let's not be naive that I'm 100% success rate in this. Like, these are people, and I'm a person. We have different values and beliefs, and so and we have different expectations and different perspectives. So there's this whole complexity around dealing with people, and we have 18 athletes. I have about 9 to 10 staff, and it's constantly figuring out how we can all work together. So probably that's why I like coaching as well. But the effort needs to be there in the relationship. And I think the X's and O's, yeah, we're going to win and lose that. But the one thing I can absolutely control is the relationship game. I can control how much effort I put into that, how much time I put into that. And there are times, like, Roger pushes me on this, because there's times when you're on, like, you've been away for like 8 weeks and you're on game number 12 and you are tired. And he's like, well, how are you going connecting with everyone? And it's like, man, I just want to sleep. And it's like, no, okay. I'm like, hey, what are you doing? It's just maybe walking to the bus, making sure before practice someone's putting on their shoes. And I'm like, hey, how are you feeling today? Like, how's it going? Like, how's the body holding up? And, maybe it's just that, but I have to be really intentional with it. And I'm an extrovert. So if I have to be really intentional with it, I think everybody else does as well. And that just fills into my relationship piece. And I like to what I think, sorry, my coaching philosophy around relationships and the piece around vulnerability. I think the other piece about ensuring people feel the trust and that we can have a relationship based on that trust and respect. I absolutely have to be genuine to who I am. I absolutely always do what I say I'm going to do. And, I want them to see me as a human being. So that's where I think the vulnerability is really important. I screw up. I screw up a lot. I own it. If people are going to lose respect for me because I've screwed up and owned it, so be it. But I think it's important for me to own it. And I have my own struggles, and I think that they need to see that. So, yeah.
Do you think, sharing that vulnerability, being open to them seeing you struggle or make mistakes helps create a training environment or even a competition environment where people are encouraged to take risks themselves?
Yeah, I think it's impossible to expect athletes are going to take risks if they don't feel safe and they don't feel like you're taking risks or that you're pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. Like, everyone follows your lead. Everyone follows their teammates' leads as well. Like, if you want others, we don't differentiate between staff and athletes. If we have expectations and values and standards, we are consistent. You're part of Canada. You've got to meet them. It doesn't matter what your role is within the team. So if I'm saying take risks and be vulnerable, and we've got to do that as staff. So I mean, I do think, like, I'm not also naive to think that being a woman who shows vulnerability, there is a gender bias. Like, I'm not interested in people telling me there's not. Like, I live it every day. But I think there's a gender bias with athletes as well. So when you are showing that vulnerability, it's also me accepting there might be some gender bias here, and we're going to work around that. They're going to learn that, I'm someone who's going to work hard and find answers for them. But if they think that, me showing vulnerability is a sign of weakness, that's because they've grown up in a male dominated space for coaches, right? So they're going to eventually learn that this is what coaching is. And this is how I coach. And this is the part of me that's a coach. And so, yeah, there's that piece. I mean, it's a risk, but that's my risk I'm taking.
Yeah. I think there's so much we could talk about in the gender bias and just gender in general in sport and as a head coach. And you're the only woman coaching is it in the top 30 teams, volleyball teams
You
in the
could
world?
probably go further. The next head coach I know about is Lauren Bertolacci, who head coaches Switzerland. She's one of my best friends. So that's why I know her. Like, she's
Yeah.
the only one I know about, and she coaches Switzerland. I think they're in the 50s. And so she's the
Yeah.
only one I know about. For women, I know at World Championships, they take 24 teams, and they're taking 32 next year. I'm the only woman. Volleyball Nations League, when we go to the Olympics, I'll be the only woman. Now, there are other women who coach. The USA has 2 assistant coaches who are head coaches for universities and pro teams. But Germany has a female assistant. Serbia has a female assistant, but those are the only assistant coaches. The rest are, you got to think each delegation, there's 3 coaches on 16 teams. Do the math. And I can name you 1 head coach and 4 assistant coaches who are women.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, albeit on a smaller stage, I think, like, a lot of coaches on this call right now, kind of can relate to that feeling of being an only or being a one of few. showing up at a national championship and being the only female coach you come across. How, if at all, like how has this impact or influenced your coaching journey? And maybe
No,
it hasn't impacted it,
I don't think
but
it, I honestly don't think it
yeah.
has. I don't think it has. Like, I think the the gender bias is something that does cause a lot of like stress, I would say. Is like, okay, this isn't fair, but it's like, okay, get over it, it's there. So it doesn't impact my, I don't think it's impacted like my personal journey, but what it has is it, like, I definitely make myself more available to have conversations, to talk to other coaches, to, I want coaches to ask questions. I want them to know more because I want them to see that this is possible. And the biggest thing I've always said about me coaching is that my coaching does look a little bit different to other coaches, simply because I've had to navigate having a young family. I started coaching a national team when my youngest was 1 year old. So my coaching does look a little bit different, and my home life looks totally different. And for the first 3-4 years of me being a high performance coach in that space with a young family, I was tormented with wanting to have my life look like everybody else's, like my peers. And that was just not possible. But I made sacrifices I shouldn't have made, and I absolutely it tormented me. And then when I moved to Canada, Tom was incredibly supportive, and Volleyball Canada is incredibly supportive. I'm like, screw it, I'm different, and I've accepted I'm different. My life is different. My family life is different. People have opinions on it. It doesn't really bother me anymore. But I had to go through this whole process of beating myself up over not being a stay-at-home mom, or not being the primary caregiver at times, or beating myself up that sometimes I had to like breastfeed on the side of the court. Like, I mean, and that's not what a coach does. And I mean, yeah, I tormented myself about it for a few years, but I'm well past that now. So I would say I make myself more available to have those conversations, so people know that like the struggle and the challenges are very real. You are not alone, but we can totally make this work. We got to stop thinking that coaching looks a certain way, and we absolutely have to change the coaching paradigm. And if I can be a part of that, I'll be a part of that. But has it changed my journey? No, I don't think so. I'm not like inspired to keep coaching because I'm the only woman. Sometimes I fight the fact that I'm a bit of a novelty, and I don't really want to talk about being a novelty anymore. I go to Poland and Turkey, and they want to write articles and talk about, they just want to talk about I'm a female coach. I'm like, how about we talk about I'm the coach of number 11 in the world who brought them up from number 18? Let's talk about that. But so I'm still balancing out like, how do I help change the coaching paradigm with not be a sideshow, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you have, advice to maybe people who are, in a leadership position, in a coaching role, where they're not seeing themselves reflected in the people around them? Like,
I would say find a way. That's
yeah,
all. Like, you got to
yeah.
find a way. I think I wanted to do things so badly. I had such very clear goals for myself as a coach, and for the teams that I coach, that I'm like, there's always a way, right? I truly believe there's always a way. You just got to figure it out. And for me, like, that was like, I had different support systems in Australia. I used to pay coaches to come in, or sorry, pay players to be nannies to my kids while I traveled with the other players. Like, I figured it out. And here, we figure it out, and it's okay that it looks different. It doesn't mean it's better or worse, but I just think find a way that enables you to keep going and achieve your goals and meet your benchmarks. And don't listen to the people who say that it has to look a certain way. And the best advice I gave someone, that was given to me from one of my mentors in Australia, was I needed some support so I can continue my job. And I asked for it, and I was told no. And it was, I was shocked. And then one of my mentors said to me, she goes, you just haven't found your person yet. She's like, you can't stop asking the question just because someone said no. That wasn't your person. Keep asking and keep asking and keep asking for what you need. You'll eventually find your people. And I didn't find that support in Australia. I absolutely have found it in Canada. I have amazing, like, our CEO at Volleyball Canada is incredibly supportive, and they've put things around me to enable me to continue my job. But when I first started asking for it, I was told no. And the best advice I was given was, don't stop asking. You got to keep asking until you find your person to say yes.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I do want to remind everyone on here that you are more than welcome to chime in. I can ask Shannon questions all night long, but I would love to hear from some other folks. So if you feel free to unmute yourself, feel free to put it in the chat. Oh, perfect. That didn't take much coaxing. How do you push the more talented athletes to keep working on their craft when they are advanced from others?
That's a great question. I always get asked about motivation, and I will preface it with I've had the luxury of I basically have only coached national teams. So people who get to that level are fairly motivated individuals. It's not like I have to say, look, you have to be great. Like if they want a career in volleyball, they have to push themselves to be better. Otherwise, they won't get those professional contracts. They won't play for the national team. However, I think when you're in a gym where there's really varying levels of talent and you've got that upper echelon, like how do I keep them motivated? I think it's important to keep the standards really high for them and then give them different challenges. Like you might be in sixes, but you say to them, like you're playing 6v6 for those who aren't volleyball people, and tell them you can't score the same way twice in a row, or okay, that's got to be yours has to be a 3 pass to count, or if you're not serving over 65 kilometers per hour, it's no points are up for grabs. So you can kind of change the scoring in a way that they have a slightly different standards. I also think like for those athletes who who are at the upper echelon but lack that motivation, they won't be there for long. And I think that's also important for you to remind them of that they may, I saw a great quote. It was actually a physiologist from the AIS who talked about like talent identification, and that basically we have no idea. And we got to stop saying we have any idea because we don't. But we put so much emphasis on physical ability when they're 10, 11, 12 years old, where really it's the character that is the greatest indicator of success, like their work ethic, their ability to take feedback, their ability to be motivated and push themselves. And I would say volleyball is a sport that we joined really, really late. So our 12-year-olds in hockey are really our 16-year-olds in volleyball. Right? So you have a 16-year-old who may be physically gifted right now, but lacks the motivation and work ethic. They're going to be surpassed. So I think that's really important lesson for us as coaches to teach them, like really understand, hey, your ceiling, you're just a little bit closer to your ceiling than everybody else. But if you want to keep pushing that ceiling, you have to do X, Y, and Z to get there. Lay it out for them and then challenge them differently in drills. Like you may have that, someone has to complete a drill, they have to do X, Y, and Z. Give them, one more level. Give them one more standard. I think they need to feel that they're being pushed in that way.
Thank you for that question, CJ. Anyone else, feel free to chime in. I'll kind of follow up to the point you were just making about, different characteristics that we should be looking for in athletes. I'm wondering if there are behaviors or characteristics that are like non-negotiables or for you, or if you see it, you're like green flag, green flag.
I try, let me think. Yeah, I mean, work ethic's a big one. I think, work ethic and accountability in our gym, like some of our, our values are, we're accountable, we're competitors, we're team first, and we're warriors. And those are our 4 like main values in our gym. And those are really based around what I really value as a person and as a coach as well. And I'm sure a lot of people on this call would be like, yeah, I totally identify with that. But the work ethic and the accountability as a coach, we should never have to train work ethic. Like never. That's like a minimum standard. You're coming into the gym, that's an expectation, right? So someone who's working hard and really accountable. So you give feedback as a coach and everyone's yeah. Because sometimes it's a defense mechanism and sometimes they're just nervous and sometimes they just like, well, I'm supposed to say yes because I've got to show I'm coachable. I actually hate the yes. I don't, it's not a red flag at all. I'm just like, oh, that's a little bit annoying. But it's the accountability piece. It's like, okay, I want you to swing through the ball faster on serve. Like I want a faster arm. Yeah. Or I want to toss the ball in front. Yeah. But then they err with the toss behind them. I'm like, okay, you've heard my feedback. You've said yes, but you've erred the complete opposite. It's like I've asked you to toss further in front. So if anything, if you're listening to what I'm saying, you're going to be tossing further in front, and that's where your error is going to be. So for me, the accountability piece is yes, doing the things you say you're going to do, but it comes down to the learning piece as well. If I've given you feedback, you say you've understood it, then what is your error looking like? And that will dictate whether or not you're actually trying to implement that feedback. And then there could be just a disconnect. It's like, okay, a check back in is did you actually understand what I meant? Like, what is it what was the instruction I gave you? And then they can, regurgitate it to you. So when we're, looking at athletes that work ethic, that compete, big, big time. Okay. And also the accountability piece. And I always say, like, when we work with a group, young group, especially, you've got that top 10%. They were born getting it. Like, they show they're 100% accountable. They're competitive. They're working hard. Like, you don't have to do anything. They were born with it. You got the bottom 10%. They're never going to get it. My best time as a coach is spent in that 80%, figuring out which side of the line they're going to fall on. And I think that's where our job is as coaches, is in that 80%. Okay, working with them and teaching them and challenging them to see, can they get up to the top 10, or are they the group that's never going to get it? And I think it's really easy for us to, that top 10%, we don't have to do anything. Our coaching is in that 80%. And so, like I said, those values are the ones that I'm probably looking for with an athlete. Obviously, we're a game that plays high above the tape. So unfortunately, there's physical pieces that if you aren't born with them, you're probably not going to play for Canada. But if you do have no physical limitations, we're looking for those people who have a willingness to compete, a willingness to be accountable with their feedback and their actions, and absolutely work hard. Yeah, we actually have a saying in our gym that we are, like, it's up on our boards, and it says, we're not training for easy, we're training for hard. And that applies to every aspect of what we do, because what we do is very hard emotionally, mentally. But there's also that physical piece. It's like, we're not training for easy. You're not meant to be comfortable. If you're comfortable, you're not growing. And so we're always trying to push that.
I love that. And I have a question here from Sarah that kind of relates to growing, but for you as a coach. So how do you ensure you keep growing and learning as a coach when you are in season, perhaps a bit busy?
Yeah.
Perhaps always busy, I'm sure.
In season, the in-season learning is through failing. It's absolutely, you've got to get it. You're getting it wrong to get it right. I try not to fail too much in season, but that's where, it's really important. We strongly believe in debriefs, whether that's just, using your feedback loop as an individual, like being very well skilled at looking at, okay, which one of our, performance pillars, we talk about performance pillars, has failed. Okay. And if that has failed, what's my plan for next time? And then, then I'm ready to implement it. But if I never acknowledge that something has failed, and our pillars of performance are technical, tactical, physical, mental, emotional, and team. So every time we lose or something's going wrong, it's like, okay, which one of my pillars is failing? And then what's the plan? But if we never talk about it having failed and what's our plan for next time, it'll just keep going. So that's the in-season piece. That's how we're learning. We're learning through our failures. We're learning through our not maybe doing as well as we thought we would have. Out of season, I work with mentors. I very much value mentors. I spoke to Alice McNeil last night. I was in Turkey a month ago with Glenn Hoag for a week. I mic him up during games. We talk through game planning. I mean, I spoke to Glenn Hoag just last week. I do a lot of podcasts. We share podcasts between mentors and coaches. I talk through problems with them. They have all had skin in the game. So I work with a lot of mentors. I also get into a lot of people's gyms. I go to youth sport coaches' gyms. You can learn something from every single coach. I go, when I'm visiting athletes in Europe, I'm into other professional coaches' gyms. I do a lot of off-season learning as much as possible, but I can't tell you how much I value working with mentors. And mentors, I feel for me, it can't be just anyone. It needs to be someone for me who understands the pressures that I have to deal with. So I think, I'm looking for national team coaches. I'm looking for coaches who've tried to qualify for Olympics. I think there's just some unique challenges to the environment I'm in. And for me, I really wanted mentors who understood that. Cross-sport learning, I love it. I met with Gina Kingsbury last week. I'm supposed to be going to visit them at some stage. I have no time, but at some stage, Gina Kingsbury is hockey, for those who don't know. She's with the Toronto Pro team, but also Hockey Canada. So cross-sport learning is amazing. I love it. I love to hear how other sports are doing things. I'm always looking for a way that we can be better in how we manage athletes, how we prepare athletes, how we look at how we manage team dynamics, how I work with staff. I do this in the off season, and I love that piece of it. But if I don't do it, if I sit here and go, wow, I'm doing such a great job, like I have nothing to change. We just went from 18 to 11 in the world. Like, I'm awesome. No, I'm not. I'm not the best coach in the world. I probably never will be. And if I do feel like I am, that's probably the second I'm not, right? So that's kind of the mentality I have.
Thank you for that. And thanks for that question. Deanne, you have your hand up. Go for it.
Thanks, Allison. So I'm a volleyball coach, development coach. My team is a U14 team, and half of them are actually 13. And I had them last year at U13, and we had a tier 1 provincial bronze medal, which super proud
Awesome.
of because I didn't play volleyball. I'm also a gymnastics coach, and I didn't do
Mhm.
gymnastics. But I have
Yep.
a house full of 3 daughters who did gymnastics and volleyball. So I got into it
Mhm.
to keep them playing.
Yep.
So this group I have is absolutely unbelievable. My 2 questions. The first one is about multi-sport.
Mhm.
I'm a huge supporter of multi-sport with these kids who are like 12, 13, and just turning 14. Um, in your experience as a high level coach, when does like, and so, I mean, again, they're young. We did triple ball and we're getting ready for our provincials in a month. And it's regular volleyball. For multi-sport at your level, when does the conflicts, like they actually pick volleyball more times than they pick the other, and they have kind of a strategy. If it's a game, they go. If it's soccer game, they go. um if it's a practice, they skip and go to the game, which I
Sure.
have no problem with that. But for elite coaches, I mean, kids are figuring out what sport they want or what they're good at and maybe what they want to pursue. What's your thoughts about when multi-sport kind of has to not
Sure.
go away, but
My unscientific opinion is when the athlete wants it to. Like
okay.
I don't, a multi-sport athlete is fantastic. I think athletes have a lot of different interests, and I think about what my main sport was when I was growing up versus what I actually do for a living. I think multi-sport athlete allows them, it fights against burnout. It actually is great for injury prevention. I think it develops a whole physical skill set in an athlete, which they'll benefit, just pure athleticism. Some of the best athletes in the world were multi-sport. I think
Mhm.
Wayne Gretzky even said, like, yeah, I played a lot of hockey, but I played a lot of other things. And I think multi-sport is perfect, and they should do it as long as they want to.
Okay.
And I think that right now, because my kids are minor league, like they're youth level sports, and I honestly hate youth sports. I think there's so much broken in the system, but because it's such a monetized system now where people are making money off academies and showcases and camps, and it's like, yeah, so sports year round. Like it's not necessary. I even spoke to some parents. I was at youth sport championships this last weekend, and I said, pick and choose. Yeah, there's some opportunities that are really important, but not every opportunity is a great opportunity. And we're not, looking at athletes going, okay, where did you play club? Did you do that academy? If you're going to be good, you're going to be good. If you have other interests, do other interests. Like I think by the time you get to university, some universities will let you even do dual sport. Not a lot of them, but some will let you do dual sport.
Okay.
Maybe then you're going to have to pick and choose. But I wouldn't force an athlete to pick and choose. No way. Let them play.
I think parents put pressure on the kids because of time and school and all the pressures
You
that
know what it
kids
is?
have.
It's keeping up with the Joneses. Like I feel it. Like I know better, and I'm like, my kids are lacrosse players, and it's like, well, they want to do this travel team lacrosse at 9 and 11, and I know better. But there's a part of me that went, but other people are doing it. My kid's not going to get selected for A1 team, and then I'm like, Shannon, who cares what team they get selected to at 9 and 11? Like, who cares? But I catch myself because I see all the other parents doing it. And we're trying to keep up with the Joneses. We want to give our kids the best opportunities, and we don't want them to miss out. And it comes from, I think, a really good place, but it's a beast. And we need to keep that perspective, like really keep perspective. So multi-sport, all for it. Volleyball's a late sport. I love volleyball players who also play beach volleyball. I think that really is
Yeah.
a great it trains a whole game. You can't hide. I would love to see volleyball players do more of that. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, play other things. Let them explore other interests. And you know what? If they are a great volleyball player and you're so afraid of losing them because they are starting to play basketball, but then they fall in love with basketball,
That's where they need to
okay,
go. That's where they
see you
need to
later.
go. Yeah.
Like my
Yep.
first year, one of my, dearest athletes, like she called me up. She's like, I'm going to go to beach. I said, amazing. And she's crushing it with the next gen team there. I'm like, amazing. I wish you all the best. Like, that's what you want to do, go do it. And when people say, I'm done with the national team because I just can't, is that your decision? Awesome. Like, my job as a coach is not to make decisions for them. It's for me to lay out, okay, if you make these decisions, these are the risks. Okay. These might be the consequences. And young people may be the same. It's like, okay, if you do all these sports, you might struggle to make some of these practices, which might impact like whether or not you get playing time at 12, 13. It shouldn't. I mean, there better be fair play up until at least 15. Otherwise, like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
So I think, like, let the kid decide.
Okay, that's great. My other question, really quickly there, Allison, is because it's the same group. I love this group so much. I've been coaching since 2016, but I started head coaching in 2019, terrified, because I didn't play. So I have a really good assistant who played, who does, I can demo some stuff with these young kids. But so I have this U14 group. I took 15 because that's how I roll. I always take the top number, and the kids yell at me because it is fair play. You can only dress 12 kids per game. Anyways, that's another story. Around age and level. So these girls are U14, half can do U14 again next year. The other half, 8 of them, would have to go up to U15. I tend to stick with my groups. I didn't even have a tryout this year. I pulled those kids. I kept them for my club season because I want a gold medal. I want to win a gold medal, and I want that banner at provincials. And these kids
Why?
are,
It's U14.
yeah, they're doing
I
16.
want them to come back next year and have a
These
great
kids,
experience.
yeah,
I don't care about a gold medal or a banner.
yeah. Well, they want to top their bronze from last year. It's the same kids. And I have never seen skill level like this in this age group. They're doing 3 touches consistently. They are doing 6-2 effectively. The refs are coming to me and saying, Deanne, your kids are running plays. I'm like, yeah, they are at U14. So they're very skilled for their age. So my question then becomes, what's the benefit? And I have this conversation in my head and with other people, those kids that could play U14 next year, do I get a coach for U14, have them try out at U15? Do I keep them all together? Because I'll tell you, there's quite a bond there. They all go to school together.
What do they
So
want to
I'm,
do?
oh, yeah, don't know.
Yeah, I'd say it's like what they want to do.
Okay.
And I think like your job is to just lay it out for them. Like, hey, you want to play U14? You'll be a top player on this team. You get to be in a leadership role. You go to 15, your playing time might be limited,
Yeah.
but I think it's just their call. And
Okay.
I think that what we do know for a fact, scientifically, the more you play a sport, the better you get at it. So if you're choosing a higher level to sit on the bench, that is not a good decision at 13,
Right.
14,
Yep.
15, 16. 17 years old. My kid got cut from A1 to play A2. Yeah, my ego was totally hurt because I'm living my dreams through him. But he became a better player because he was a main player for A2. So it's like I just think, ask them what they want to do. And I do think we overthink it a little bit at this level. Like, as long as they're playing playing volleyball and they like playing volleyball and they're enjoying it and they're having a positive experience, I honestly think like they'll just get better. Coaches get far too much credit. We are not that good.
I'm not that good.
You know,
I didn't play. I'm relying on my assistant, right? So
yeah.
anyways,
Yeah.
yes.
So I would ask them and just lay it
Okay.
out for them. Like, hey, if you go up, this is what it will look like. If you stay down, this will look like. You make the decision. And we do the same with young athletes going to U Sport and NCAA. We don't make decisions for them. We say, here's the opportunities. Here's the questions you should ask. Here are the positives and the negatives. You make the decision. We'll support you because it's their call, really.
Yeah. Great. Thank you.
Thanks, Deanne. We are just about at 8 o'clock. I'll give a very last chance for anyone who wants to pipe up, but otherwise we're going to let Shannon continue with her day since it still looks like it's sunny where you are, which is amazing.
Well, it's not sunny. It was bright. It's bright still.
Alice Champion. Squeak one last one in.
I have one last question. You were mentioning about the sense of urgency going into that quarterfinal to not going into the quarterfinal at VNL. How do you think moving forward, what's the plan to not let that happen again, or to try not to let that happen again?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I think every time that we start a training block or even a training, we start the session with like, hey, this is what we're doing today. This is how it relates to our goal. We're always revisiting our goal, always revisiting what we're trying to achieve. And then like, what's the focus for that day and how it relates to it. So we start a training block off with sometimes I have like a lame PowerPoint. I said, don't do death by PowerPoint, but lame PowerPoint. But then every single day, like we'll have maybe a little video of like, this was our goal yesterday to achieve this big, huge vision. And then we do video every day with the things that we were doing well in line with that and things we didn't do well. Roger always hits home with us that, you know, the Olympics and a qualification and for anything, for a U Sport championship or a provincial championship, that's the thing that gets you out of bed in the morning, that gets you through the tough days. That's like your big goal, your big vision, but that's not what you focus on the day-to-day. The day-to-day are the little steps. And so I think our jobs as coaches is to really break it down for them, because it's hard for athletes to see, well, I just want to go to the Olympics. It's like, oh, fantastic, but this is how we're going to do it. And I think that sense of urgency comes from us revisiting the goal consistently and really breaking it down to make it like process driven of how we're going to do it. And then having standards. So we are a very statistical sport. I don't know if you're volleyball or not, but we're a very statistical sport. So we have positional standards and we have performance standards, and we keep those in our gym, and we're always tracking them. So like if we're serving, we know the best in the world serve with less than 8% less than 10% error. So in our gym, we're like, hey, practice, we can go up to 15%. So we're always tracking like error percentage, or we know that they serve it, they can hit their target 70% of the time. So we're always tracking like how well we're hitting our target. So we also implement performance standards within our training environment. So we're always, yes, here's our goal. This is how we're going to do it, but these are the standards we need to hit to do it. So how are we going to track it and evaluate ourselves against that consistently? That's probably in a nutshell how we do it.
Right.
But you would be surprised as a coach, like how much impact you can have just with your language. And they will absolutely tell whether you believe the things you're saying or not. Like everyone knows it. They know if you're speaking crap. So when I say there's no plan B, I absolutely have to believe that. Others, the players aren't going to believe that. And that's in the language. Now, early on when we're saying no plan B, I had to catch myself saying, if we go to the Olympics, I'm like, okay, stop. And so I'm training myself, right? And I think that that's really important as well. But our language can affect a lot.
Okay, I love that. Thank you.
No problem.
Amazing question, Alice. Thank you for that. I'm seeing stuff in the chat, but we gotta cut her off. We told Shannon we're done at 8, and I do really appreciate your time, Shannon. And thank you to all of the amazing coaches who've been on here today. Yeah, I hope we'll all be rooting for you, Shannon, and maybe now some non-volleyball people will be rooting for you too. So yeah.
Thank you for having me. And we will be, you'll be able to watch our games on CBC. We start playing in Rio middle of May, and we're in Rio, Texas, and Japan. So we'll know by June 17th if we qualify or not.
And you will. And you
I know,
will.
I'm like sweating just talking about it. But yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. And if anybody ever sees me around, you are more than welcome to come and chat to me. I love a chat. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Good night,
Thank you,
everybody.
Allison.